In my previous life, my aunt found a painted pottery basin. I could tell at a glance that the basin was unusual and advised her to throw it away, but she refused, so I secretly threw it away when she wasn't paying attention. As it turned out, the person who picked it up quickly rose to fame and fortune, driving luxury cars, buying villas, and becoming a wealthy local figure. When my aunt and her family found out, they were furious, blaming me for throwing away their chance at immense wealth and demanding compensation. Finally, they set a fire in my home, causing my entire family to die tragically, but they didn't know that the basin required pain to bring wealth, and the backlash was extremely terrifying. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my aunt picked up the painted pottery basin. Look how beautiful this basin is. I plan to use it as a flower pot. Looking at my aunt holding a painted pottery basin and smilingly showing it to us, I knew I had been reborn. Seeing her smiling face, the scene of my entire family's tragic death in my previous life suddenly flashed into my mind. My heart ached with a throbbing pain, a surge of hatred rushed to the top of my head, and I almost wanted to push her, to shove her down the stairs. My aunt didn't notice anything unusual about me at all, not even my mom and the others did. They were still looking at the painted pottery basin in my aunt's hand, thinking it looked quite nice, but just like in my past life, I could tell at a glance that this painted pottery basin was very eerie. It features a rare painted design on its inner wall, consisting of two symmetrical human-faced fish patterns. I have studied metaphysics and history, and I know it was used as a coffin lid for burying children in ancient times. It is both a treasure basin and a devouring basin. In my past life, I advised my aunt to throw it away, but she refused. She even stomped her feet and said, "Why throw it away when it's perfectly fine? A flower pot costs dozens of dollars." I couldn't persuade her, so while she was cooking, I secretly took the pot and threw it into the community trash bin. Afterward, she didn't chase after me to hit me, but she did scold me a few times. That was until she heard that a family in the community had picked up that pot. The family said it was a heaven-sent treasure basin, and from that day on, they made a huge fortune. First, they bought luxury cars, then a grand villa, becoming wealthy in the area. My aunt only then remembered that the painted pottery basin was the treasure basin, but I had thrown it away. She told my uncle and their two children, then stormed into my house in a rage, saying I had thrown away their immense wealth and demanding compensation. My mom was so angry with them that she had a sudden heart attack and collapsed on the sofa, and my dad was also beaten to the ground. I hurriedly explained, "I threw the basin away because it was eerie, otherwise, you would have died. Please, get my parents to the hospital quickly." But they didn't believe me. My uncle even rushed up to me and slapped me across the face. "You ignorant little brat, what do you know?" my aunt scolded me. "If you hadn't thrown that basin away, our family would already be living in a big villa and enjoying a good life. Who would still be stuck in this shabby neighborhood?" Even my cousin Jenny accused me. "You threw away my life as a wealthy heiress. If it weren't for you, I could have married a rich second-generation heir as a lady of high status." My cousin Leo even slapped me. "If you hadn't thrown away that treasure bowl, I would have married my goddess long ago. Now, she's married to some rich old man." One by one, they all came to blame me, and suddenly I saw that my parents were already unconscious. Evil thoughts arose in their hearts. They actually contemplated murder. My aunt and cousin held me down, while my cousin tied me up all over, and my uncle poured gasoline. When they reached my doorstep, they threw in a lighter. My family of 3 tragically died in that fire. My aunt paused for a moment as she spoke, then, with a strange expression, she looked at me and said, "Lola, this time you won't be able to throw away my treasure basin again." My parents looked at me with confusion, not understanding what it meant, but I was suddenly jolted. It turned out that not only had I been reborn, but my aunt had also been reborn. This sentence was clearly a test for me. Realizing this, I immediately said, "Auntie, what are you talking about? Why would I ever throw away your basin?" Auntie still looked at me with a wary expression. But I didn't want her to know that I had also been reborn, so I decided to wait and see for now. To avoid raising her suspicions, I had to pretend to advise her just like in my previous life. "But I really think this basin is unusual, Auntie. You shouldn't take it home." Just a faint remark, not a word more. Hearing this, my aunt's expression finally returned to normal, thinking she was the only one who had been reborn. Then she immediately hugged the basin in her arms. "What's so strange about a basin? I don't care, no one is taking it away from me," my parents muttered. "We really don't understand. What's so special about a basin anyway?" My aunt argued. "What do you know? By the time you understand, it'll be too late. just watch as my family becomes richer than yours." After saying that, she happily carried the painted pottery basin back to her own home. My family and my aunt live in the same residential community. Since my grandparents only had 2 daughters, the factory where my grandfather worked once offered a benefit, allocating 2 old and small apartments in this community for him. After they passed away, it became 1 apartment for my mom and 1 for my aunt. Both my mom and my aunt got married during difficult times, so they both lived here, but thanks to my dad's hard work over the years, and my substantial income from working full-time in self-media, we've already bought a 3-bedroom apartment in a newly built development in the city, and it's currently being renovated. And my uncle, because he enjoys eating, drinking, and having fun, squandered all the family's wealth. To this day, the 4 of them still haven't managed to move out. My aunt's relationship with my mother is sometimes good and sometimes bad. When things are good, she comes to our house to freeload meals. When she's jealous that our family is wealthier than theirs and envies my mother for having a better life, she ignores us. In her previous life, it was just as well that she didn't know this painted pottery basin could bring wealth, but she found out later. This time, with the chance to finally become wealthy, how could she let it slip away? Actually, I almost couldn't resist telling her the method to get money from this painted pottery basin just now, as long as I find a way to hurt myself. That basin will keep spitting out money, but I was afraid she would become suspicious, so I decided not to say anything. After a week without any news from her house, I thought maybe she couldn't find a way or had given up. Unexpectedly, the next day my mom received a call from my aunt, saying she wanted to treat our whole family to a meal. My mother was very puzzled. "It's so strange, your aunt has always been extremely stingy. I've known her for decades and never once has she offered to treat me to a meal. The sun must be rising from the west today." My father looked at his phone and nodded in agreement. Seeing the 2 of them still alive and well beside me, I felt an inexplicable sense of happiness. After all, the image of their tragic deaths in my previous life still lingered in my mind. I explained to my mom, "Auntie might have found some money." My mom glanced at me, looking quite convinced. "Probably, otherwise, how could someone who usually splits every penny in 2 be so generous?" The restaurant Auntie took us to was a mid to high-end one in our city. The per-person cost was around $580. This level of spending is something even my family rarely experiences. By the time we entered the private room, their family of 3 or 4 was already seated at the large table waiting for us. My aunt and her husband were dressed to impress, one in a suit and tie, the other in a stylish dress that looked freshly bought, and my cousin Jenny was no longer wearing cheap street market clothes. Instead, she was dressed in something that looked like it cost a few $100s. My cousin Leo has started dressing much more neatly. He's no longer the sloppy little rascal he used to be. So, is this painted pottery basin spitting out money? Looking at these murderers who killed my entire family in my past life, my hatred is hard to suppress. I wish they would empty the painted pottery basin right now and then die from the backlash. Seeing us come in, my aunt threw the menu in front of my mother with a showy expression. "Here, order whatever you want." Before we could react, my uncle tossed a pack of cigarettes in front of my dad. "Damn, who knew cigarettes were this good? You haven't tried them either, have you? Here, have a pack." With such an arrogant attitude, my parents' expressions instantly turned sour. One is holding the menu without looking at it. The other is staring at that pack of cigarettes without moving. I thought that was the end of it, but then Jenny also tossed a bag to me, saying it was a branded one and quite expensive. I took a look at this unknown brand and thought to myself, seeing that Leo was about to show off something as well, I quickly stood up and asked, "Auntie, has your family struck it rich? Why is everyone so extravagant?" I handed her a stepping stone, and my aunt immediately stood up, beaming with pride as she boasted, "I'm telling you, I have such good luck. Last time I found a treasure basin, you have no idea. As long as you make a wish to it, it keeps spitting out money, as much as you want." I sneered inwardly. Sure, it spits out money, but is it really that simple to just make a wish? If it's that simple, why not just buy a villa, drive a luxury car, and become wealthy? How could it be the awkward situation of appearing both rich and poor now? My parents definitely wouldn't believe it. My mom, "Little sister, are you crazy? What era is this now? And you still believe in this? Haven't you been scammed?" My dad, "Did you run into a pyramid scheme or something?" Seeing that my parents didn't believe her, and she was determined to prove to me that the painted pottery basin she found was a treasure bowl, not something eerie, my aunt immediately stomped her feet in frustration. How could that be? The money really came from that bowl. In just 3 days, it gave us tens of thousands of dollars. Jenny also stood up. Uncle, can't you see how wealthy we look? I'm young, but I'd know if I ran into a pyramid scheme, Leo sneered. Sis, don't bother with them, if they don't believe it, forget it, let's keep a low profile and make a fortune, I chimed in at the right moment. Turns out I was mistaken, I almost mistook the treasure basin for something sinister. With my confirmation, my parents didn't say anything more, because they know I have a talent for this and that I wouldn't misjudge. Seeing my parents remain silent, my aunt immediately became smug again. I told you it must be a treasure basin. At that moment, I suddenly noticed a bruise on her neck and casually asked, Aunt, what happened to your neck? My aunt, who had been bragging non-stop, suddenly paused, realizing I had seen it, and a flicker of panic crossed her face. My uncle suddenly stepped in to defuse the situation. Oh, that was from me kissing her. At that point, I stopped pressing the issue and pretended to believe their explanation. Keep hiding it, just keep hiding it like this. The meal was extremely awkward, but I was very happy and even ordered several signature dishes, the most expensive ones. They slapped their distressed faces, but to save face for themselves, they still smiled and urged me to eat more. When it came time to pay the bill, oh dear, it was over 6,000. They ended up pushing the per-person cost to over 800, their faces twitched again. After all, this money was earned at the cost of their pain. This was truly a painful loss. After a short while, we moved into our new home. My boyfriend Kevin helped us move together. We've been dating for 2 or 3 years, and our parents have long since discussed it. We were just about to talk about marriage. We planned to get engaged half a year after we moved into our new home. On the day of the move, we unexpectedly ran into my aunt and her whole family in the neighborhood. They seemed to have stepped up a notch in class, almost like wealthy people now. Jenny was quite surprised to see me, carrying a designer handbag and swaying her hips in a bodycon dress as she walked up to us. With a haughty expression, she said, Cousin, didn't expect this, did you? We're going to be neighbors again. We just bought a large flat here last week, paid in full, and it's already renovated, ready to move in with just our bags. I glanced at my aunt and the others, all of whom had joyful expressions on their faces. I casually responded, Well, congratulations to you all then. Beside me, Kevin suddenly lit up. You must be Jenny, right? Long time no see, you've changed so much. It didn't bother me as much when they were showing off in front of me, but Kevin's words made me feel extremely uncomfortable all over. As my relatives, they have all met Kevin, but at that time, they had no money and naturally didn't stand out. Now they all have money to dress themselves up, and suddenly they look completely different. But Kevin didn't notice my displeased expression. Instead, his eyes lit up as he looked at Jenny. Jenny also sensed it and immediately covered her mouth to laugh. Brother-in-law, you're so sweet. I'm really happy to hear that. Kevin blushed, only then remembering that I was nearby, he glanced at me and, seeing my displeased expression, quickly composed himself. I walked ahead with a grim expression, carrying the things. Jenny shouted after me, Cousin, let's celebrate the housewarming together. When I mentioned that my aunt had also moved into our neighborhood, my parents were stunned, especially my mom, who knew exactly how much my aunt's family could afford. She couldn't believe it. How did my sister suddenly manage to pay in full for a large apartment? My dad was also puzzled. Exactly. Look at how hard my daughter and I worked to earn the money to buy this one apartment. They don't even run a business or anything, so how did they suddenly become so wealthy? At that moment, Kevin suddenly chimed in, maybe they had a windfall. I shot him a glare, thinking about his behavior earlier, and angrily hit him. Then I asked him angrily, why were you looking at my cousin with such a bright expression just now? What do you mean by that? Kevin's face turned pale, and he glared at me, saying, what nonsense, I've only met her a few times, she's not as pretty as you, so what interest could I possibly have? Seeing him flustered and eager to explain, I felt a bit better inside. My mom also chimed in, you two are getting engaged soon, so don't stir up any trouble. Kevin immediately thumped his chest and promised, Auntie, don't worry, I'll marry no one but Lola in this lifetime. My parents couldn't help but laugh when they saw him like that. A few days later was the day of our housewarming banquet. We had reserved a table at the hotel in advance. However, when we arrived at the hotel to welcome our relatives and friends, we saw my aunt and her whole family also greeting guests at the hotel entrance. Jenny, wearing a goose-yellow strapless dress, actually gave Kevin a flirtatious glance when she saw him. Kevin's eyes lit up at first, then a hint of embarrassment flickered across them. Because my mom and my aunt share mutual friends and relatives, everyone my mom invited was intercepted by my aunt. Our reserved table was on the second floor, while theirs was on the third. When my aunt mentioned the third floor, those relatives happily followed them, simply because the second floor cost $2,000 per table, while the third floor was $3,500 per table. In the end, only my mom's close friends were left on her side, while most of the guests were my dad's relatives and friends. This time, my mom was truly angry. She pulled my aunt aside and questioned her. "Little sister, what do you mean by this? Why are you trying to steal my guests?" Auntie toyed with her bright red fingernails and said casually, "Sis, you're not being fair. Those relatives are ours too, so how can you say I'm stealing them? Besides, what does it have to do with me if they prefer the banquet on the third floor? It's your own fault for being so stingy and only being able to afford the second floor." This made my mom so angry that she scolded my aunt for the first time. "We're stingy. If we're stingy, why do you keep coming to our house to eat for free? I don't care why your family suddenly became rich, but even so, you shouldn't act like this, should you?" My uncle happened to step out of the elevator and, hearing my mom say that, immediately stormed over to her. "What's wrong with how we live? Isn't this world all about the rich? Now that we have money, we can spend it however we want." I quickly rushed to my mother's side, shielding her behind me, and glared at the couple, saying coldly, "So you think having a bit of dirty money makes you all high and mighty, huh? The money you've made is all filthy. Be careful, you might not even know how you'll end up dead." My aunt and the others immediately turned pale at my words. As they moved, I could see the bruised skin exposed on their bodies. This is clearly risking one's life for money. Jenny and Leo came down at this moment. Noticing her parents' unusual expressions, Jenny immediately turned her fire on me. "Cousin, did you say something to my parents?" I glanced at her neck and arms, not even sparing her calves. She was quite fair and clean, with nothing there. I spread my hands and said, "No, I was just teaching them how to speak properly." Her expression changed slightly. She was about to scold me, but after glancing behind me, she immediately put on a pitiful look and said, "Cousin, my mom is still your aunt. And they are your elders. How can you lecture your elders like that?" At that moment, Kevin, who had walked over to me, asked in disbelief, "Lola, how can you be so rude?" I hadn't even said anything, yet he started apologizing on my behalf. "Aunt, uncle, please don't take it to heart with Lola, she's just being immature." "Shut up, who gave you the right to speak for me?" I immediately snapped at him, still fuming. I questioned him further. "They disrespected my parents. So why should I respect them?" Kevin looked at me with disbelief and said, "Lola, how did you become so unreasonable? You're calling me by my full name now." My mom couldn't understand either and asked Kevin, "Kevin, how could you say that about my daughter?" My dad's face darkened even more. "My daughter is not for you to question." Kevin's face turned pale and then flushed. His gaze was wandering, occasionally glancing at Jenny as if seeking her approval. "I see, he's got his eye on Jenny." Our family felt particularly uncomfortable during this housewarming dinner. My parents felt that our relatives and friends were being taken away by my aunt, which not only hurt their pride but also made them very angry, and I feel like I'm about to have a breakup. The next day, I saw Kevin pacing back and forth at the entrance of the neighborhood. Just as I was about to walk over, I noticed him looking in another direction, and it was Jenny who was walking toward him. After they met up, they walked out of the neighborhood together, behaving intimately. At this moment, I don't know whether I feel more anger or sadness. Actually, ever since the last time Kevin's eyes lit up when he saw Jenny, I had a vague feeling that it might be over between him and me. So, I think the anger has already overshadowed the sadness. But of all people, why did he have to choose Jenny? I immediately took out my phone and sent him 2 words, "Break up," then I blocked and deleted him in one go. Next, I went home and told my parents that the wedding preparations could be called off. I also asked them to explain everything clearly to Kevin's parents. Not long after, both of his parents called me one after another to persuade me not to break up. At first, I was a little touched, thinking they had accepted me and were trying to reconcile us, but to my surprise, when I firmly insisted on breaking up, they stopped trying to persuade me. Instead, they asked my family to return the money they had given earlier for the engagement preparations. There are also the gifts and money transfers Kevin gave me before. Altogether, it adds up to about $30,000. I was so shocked that my eyes widened. Unable to believe it, one moment they were the image of perfect future in-laws, and the next, they turned into stingy uncle and aunt. The key point is that Kevin never showed up from start to finish. After I calculated all the money, I asked them to come and get it. I thought only Kevin's parents would do something so shameful, but I didn't expect Kevin and Jenny to come too. as soon as they entered the door. My mom couldn't help but scold Jenny, "You grew up with your sister. How could you steal her boyfriend? Aren't you ashamed?" My dad got even angrier, "Now that you have some money, why don't you go find a rich man instead of eyeing your sister's boyfriend?" Jenny swung her LV bag dismissively and said, "Why would I need to find a rich man when I have money? I definitely want someone handsome who also does whatever I say. As it happens, Kevin is exactly that kind of man. And he suits my taste perfectly." Kevin's parents chimed in at this point. "Jenny is such a sensible child, she just started dating my son and already gave us branded skincare products, premium cigarettes, and alcohol, unlike you, who's been dating for so long and hasn't bought us anything." Jenny even said she doesn't need a betrothal gift and will bring a dowry of $500,000 plus a house. Anyone with half a brain would know who to choose. It's not that I never bought them anything before. They just forgot, now, in their eyes. Jenny is just a wealthy heiress who only wants their son, which greatly satisfies their vanity. My parents wouldn't listen anymore and coldly ordered them to leave. "Then I wish you happiness. Please get out of my house." I gave them the money, didn't cry, didn't get angry, but instead laughed and said, "That's great. Luckily, I found out how disgusting your family is before getting married. Heaven has been so good to me. I hope you never come begging to me in the future. Because even if you kneel until you die, I won't save you." They all held their stomachs and laughed uncontrollably, as if they had just heard the funniest joke in the world. Kevin even said, "Lola, have you lost your mind after your breakup? Us begging you, keep dreaming." Jenny laughed so hard that tears streamed down her face. "My dear cousin seems to have gone crazy. Ha ha ha, laugh all you want, the more you laugh now, the uglier you'll cry later, in this life." Jenny didn't go after a wealthy second-generation rich kid. Instead, she stole my poor boyfriend. But Leo managed to find his goddess from his previous life as he wished. When Leo ran into me in the neighborhood with her, I recognized her at first glance. She was the campus belle who had bullied me in school, Linda, so Jenny's goddess turned out to be her. Although Linda is very beautiful, she comes from a poor family and is extremely materialistic and greedy, even during her university years. It was rumored that she was with a wealthy older man, so it was only natural that in her previous life, she married that older man. This time, she encountered Leo, who is both wealthy and relentlessly pursuing her. Even a fool would know that choosing Leo is the better option, but I know all too well where my aunt's money comes from. Linda is like a bottomless pit that can never be filled. How can their family ever satisfy her? I didn't want to deal with the annoying Leo and Linda. So I turned around to leave. Unexpectedly, the sharp-eyed Linda still spotted me. She grabbed Leo's hand, pointed at me, and said, "I think I just saw Lola, the one I used to bully. She still wants to avoid me when she sees me." Ha ha ha. Hearing her words, I didn't walk away. Instead, I turned back, stood in front of her, and without a word, slapped her across the face. Thinking about how she used to bully me and the recent humiliation my aunt and her family brought upon us, I hit Linda. After all, slapping her not only got me revenge but also indirectly gave Leo a slap in the face. Linda was stunned by my slap, covering her face and looking at me in disbelief, angrily shouting, "Lola, how dare you hit me?" Leo also stared at me wide-eyed. "How dare you hit my girlfriend?" I clapped my hands and laughed. "Just because she used to bully me, what's wrong with hitting her once? I even feel like hitting her again." Leo was so furious he raised his hand to hit me too. I'm not afraid at all, and I directly brought up Linda's dark past. "You think just because you have money, you can get a goddess, but this goddess of yours is a bit dirty. She's long been used up by older men. If it weren't for your money, you wouldn't even get to touch her feet. You don't actually think she likes you too, do you?" Linda's face turned pale and then flushed, like a chameleon. It made me feel so satisfied inside. But I didn't expect Jenny to remain unmoved. Instead, she calmly said, "That was her past. After being with me, she won't be like that anymore. I won't give her the chance, and I'll give her plenty of money. It's really disgusting." Linda's face instantly brightened, and she immediately hugged Leo's arm, showering him with kisses. Her words were as sweet as honey. "Thank you, darling. No matter if you're poor or rich in the future, you'll always be my favorite. I'll love you forever." I felt nauseated and immediately left the scene. Because both children have found partners, my aunt and uncle were so happy that they generously bought a large apartment for each of Jenny and her brother in our neighborhood. Then they quickly set the dates for their weddings. They also sent us wedding invitations. I don't know where they got the nerve, considering the two families had already fallen out. Only then did I realize that they must have done it just to beat us. They wanted to outdo our family in every way and embarrass us. They made the wedding ceremony extremely grand. The two siblings held their weddings on the same day at the same five-star hotel. Jenny didn't ask Kevin for a bride price and instead brought a dowry of $500,000 plus an apartment. Leo gave Linda a bride price of $1 million, an apartment, and a car. The wedding was planned by a famous team, and the entire event cost no less than $1 million. With such an outrageously lavish wedding, the aunt's family became the talk of the neighborhood. Occasionally, when I run into them on the street, they always look radiant with joy, especially when they see the envious looks from others. They become even more pleased with themselves. Perhaps I am the only one in this world who sees the horror behind their false prosperity, because I notice that not only are the couple, my aunt and her husband, covering their bodies tightly, but Jenny and her brother also have bruises on their bodies. Indeed, needing so much money, just relying on the two of them hurting themselves, how could the painted pottery bowl possibly produce that much money? So, Jenny and her brother also started getting involved. They now only dare to target places others can't see, not daring to touch the face. Afraid that others might notice. If I didn't know the strangeness behind this, I probably wouldn't have given it much thought. Our family didn't attend the weddings of that brother and sister. None of their family members are good. They all seem to have a grudge against me. I definitely won't flatter them just to make them look good. Their family's money sure comes quickly. They just spent a considerable amount of money on their two children's weddings, and only a month later, they went on to set up a company for them. I heard this news while taking a stroll in the neighborhood. I heard the company is quite large, and it's jointly operated by Jenny and the other three. This has caused quite a stir in the neighborhood. Everyone is guessing the background of my aunt and her family. How is it that they have an endless supply of money? My parents also found it strange after hearing about it, but they couldn't find an answer. But I still didn't tell them about the painted pottery basin that spits out money, so that my mom doesn't remind my aunt, in case they stop at this point. That won't do. I thought they had money, and as long as I didn't run into them, it would be fine, but I didn't expect that even if I didn't provoke them, they would come to my house. We have a small shop near the residential area, and my aunt actually bought that storefront, and they made us move out as quickly as possible, the first time. We didn't understand. We thought since that shop wasn't making much profit anyway, and we were planning to change locations, so we moved. We rented a storefront in a more bustling area, and my mom went to manage the shop, but less than half a month later, my aunt and her family bought that shop at a high price and made us move out again. At that moment, my mother was stunned, but I could see it clearly. This was purely meant to cause us trouble, targeting us. This time, I didn't hold back. When they came to tell us to move out, I said coldly, "We'll move out this time, but if you dare do this again, I'll make sure you live a life worse than death. The older generation is gone. If all of you die, your property will still be ours." My aunt was so angry she was stomping her feet, cursing me. "You little wretch, how dare you curse us to die? How could the property of our whole family possibly end up in your hands?" My uncle also scolded. "Although my parents are gone and I have no siblings, I have sons and daughters. There's no way it would ever be your turn to inherit." Jenny, Leo, and the other two also called me delusional. Even my own parents looked at me in shock, thinking I was talking nonsense. I laughed, pointed at them, and said, "You tell me, the weather is neither too hot nor too cold right now, so why are all of you covering yourselves up so tightly? Is it because the scars on your bodies have festered, and you're afraid others will see?" As soon as I finished speaking, their expressions changed drastically. I originally had no idea about the condition of their skin. After all, they hurt themselves to get money and were afraid others would find out, so they always covered themselves up tightly whenever they went out. They naively believed that after some time, the marks from pinching, the scars from cutting with a knife, and the wounds from hurting themselves in other ways would heal. But they were wrong. Those scars would never heal. Instead, they would slowly fester, and no medicine could cure them. I discovered their skin was beginning to fester unintentionally during a visit to the hospital. That day, I went to the traditional Chinese medicine hospital to get some herbal medicine for body conditioning, and I happened to see them in the dermatology department, because the decoration of the traditional Chinese medicine hospital is very classical. The glass in each department is a single large pane, allowing a clear view from the outside. For matters that shouldn't be seen by others, they go to the inner room, which is blocked by a screen. That day, before they went into the inner room, while they were exposing their arms and legs for the doctor's preliminary examination, I happened to pass by. After I stopped and stood still, I saw that even the doctor was greatly startled. Especially when she saw that all 6 members of her aunt's family were in the same condition, she almost fainted, and I also saw the scars on their bodies, pitted and uneven, with some even oozing pus, which was truly horrifying and disgusting. In the end, I don't know whether they got the medicine or not, but I know for sure that they couldn't be cured. After all, there is only one way to stop their skin from continuing to fester and to save their lives. Those ordinary medicines are completely useless. Their faces looked extremely grim, and my aunt asked me suspiciously, "How did you know?" I sneered. "I knew this would happen the moment you picked up that painted pottery basin. Seeing you all wearing more and more layers of clothing, I knew you were not far from death, especially, ever since that time you went to the traditional Chinese medicine hospital. It was already a death sentence." Ha ha ha, my parents immediately gasped. My aunt and the others' forced haughty expressions finally cracked, crumbling and pale, terrified and desperate, but still, I held back a strange, unyielding spirit, not daring to ask me for a solution. I wasn't in a hurry either, just watching them without saying a word. In truth, I couldn't understand why they harbored such hatred toward my family, clinging to us so tightly. Why not be like that neighbor from my past life, who, after getting the money, bought a villa, drove luxury cars, and became a wealthy local? Although the end result is death, at least we were once rich and extravagant. But why are my aunt and her family so fixated on targeting us? In the end, my aunt didn't even ask for a solution. She just dropped the line, "You all need to move out as soon as possible," and then turned and left. My uncle followed right behind her and left as well. Jenny also wanted to leave, but Kevin held her back. Jenny turned around, not understanding his intention. Kevin, however, turned to me and asked, "Lola, tell us, how can we save ourselves?" Even the usually arrogant Linda was now looking at me with anticipation. "It seems they are greedy for wealth, but they don't want to risk their lives. But one of them betrayed me, and the other bullied me, so I threw up my hands and coldly replied, 'I don't know.'" Kevin was furious. "Lola, you..." Linda also flew into a rage. "You little bitch. I should have beaten you to death back in school, even at death's door. They're still cursing me. They really deserve to die." Jenny and Leo, the siblings, thought they would hear a solution, but they got nothing. Instantly, their faces turned extremely unpleasant, as if they had eaten something disgusting. I ignored them and instead asked my parents to call a moving truck to prepare for relocating the shop, after our family moved the shop. A deep grudge was completely formed between our two families. Because I didn't tell them how to save themselves, they became even more furious and continuously obstructed us, preventing us from opening the shop. In the end, we sold all our inventory at a discount to our competitors and decided not to open the shop. I have decided that even if they kneel before me, I will not tell them how to save themselves. They go out less and less. I rarely run into them in the neighborhood, and even if I do, I can only see their eyes, because they are already covered up like Arabs, with only their eyes showing. Going out is only to go to various hospitals for checkups and treatment, which clearly hasn't been effective. Kevin couldn't reach me, so his parents called to beg me, pleading for me to tell them how to save their son. I responded with cold sarcasm, "Isn't Jenny rich? Let her save him. Didn't the Zhang family give you a lot of money? Go save him yourselves." Kevin's mother was so angry she started cursing. "That little bitch is in worse shape than my son. How could she save him? Lola, please, I'm begging you, save Kevin. If you bring him back, I'll let him marry you, okay?" I couldn't help but laugh in anger. I wouldn't save such a scumbag, and you still dare to dream of me marrying into your family. I suggest you clear the shit out of your heads. Before she could speak, I hung up the phone and blocked her in one swift move. Linda's parents don't know me, so naturally, they wouldn't come to me for help, but I heard that at first, they tried to seek medical help, but later they simply stopped caring. After all, they still have a son, and they got money when Linda was married off, so it didn't matter to them anymore. After a while, my aunt and her family had stopped going out altogether. The residents in the neighborhood would point fingers at their house. They said the family was acting very mysteriously. And not only did they seem a bit frightening, but every time they passed by, you could smell a rotting odor, and it was getting stronger each time. Perhaps my aunt and the others also realized or heard something, and they no longer dared to go out, or perhaps, their bodies had already rotted to the point where they couldn't move. That day, my mom received a phone call from my aunt. I told her to put it on speakerphone. On the other end of the phone, my aunt's voice was faint and weak. "Sis, can you come see me, please? I'm dying. Can you come see me?" My mother looked at me with a sad expression, asking for my opinion. I shook my head, signaling her to decline. who knows what she might do to my mom? What if she tries to drag my mom down with her to die? After my mom refused, my aunt's voice came through the phone, hoarse and desperate. Why are you so heartless? I'm about to die, and you won't even come. Do you know how much I've resented you my whole life? We grew up the same. Started from the same place, yet you married a better husband, had a daughter better than my children, and your family is richer than ours. Every time I went to your house for a meal, it made me so uncomfortable. Do you know that, when I found out you were about to move out of that old, run-down neighborhood, I was almost driven mad with jealousy. I thought heaven took pity on me, giving me immense wealth, letting me stumble upon a treasure bowl, allowing me to far surpass all of you. But I never expected the outcome to be dying from festering, pus-filled wounds. Why is life so unfair to me? Come quickly and join me, let's die together, die together. My aunt's terrifying scream scared my mom so much that she dropped her phone, wide-eyed, staring ahead in disbelief. Both my dad and I were shocked. It turns out her jealousy and resentment towards our family started so early. But they are biological sisters, shouldn't they be happier the better the other is doing? Why would one be so envious as to want to destroy the other? Fortunately, my mom didn't go, otherwise she would have definitely dragged my mom to her death. The other end of the phone finally went silent. My mom wanted to call the police, but I stopped her. My mom looked at me puzzled and said, "Lola, I want to call the police. They might need help." I shook my head and said, "Mom, if it were someone else, I wouldn't stop you. But let's just forget about their family, in this lifetime. I haven't sought revenge on them, yet I've still let them bully me, and that alone has made me furious enough. Now, standing by and doing nothing is our punishment for them killing us in our past life." My parents stared at me in shock, not understanding what I meant. I told them all about my rebirth and the tragic death in my previous life. Such a fantastical event. They never expected it to happen to us. It wasn't until I kept giving examples that they finally believed me. My mom was so angry she threw her phone, and my dad was furious, slapping his thigh repeatedly, thinking of the tragic death in the previous life and the various events in this one. We completely ignored it. A few days later, many police officers and forensic experts suddenly appeared in the neighborhood. It was said that someone had called the police. Someone had died in the neighborhood. The police were called because of an unbearably foul smell, not surprisingly. It was the aunt and the others who died. I heard that when the police and forensic experts broke in, they were stunned by the scene and the smell. Their bodies were covered in festering sores and pus, lying dead on the ground in disarray. The smell was so strong it nearly choked them unconscious. When they were finally carried out, the onlookers within a 10-mile radius were all choked and scattered like birds and beasts. If this matter hadn't been suppressed, it would have made the news long ago. Once they died, the property they left behind instantly became an inheritance. Kevin's parents and Linda's parents all rushed out to fight over it. In the end, the properties Kevin and Linda had when they married were returned to their respective parents, and the assets under my aunt's name were all transferred to my mother. But we liquidated all those assets and donated the proceeds. Such ill-gotten gains are better left untouched. Otherwise, misfortune is sure to follow, after the dust settled. My parents asked me mysteriously, "Lola, do you really know how to save them?" I shook my head and said, "I can't guarantee it, but if they had slammed on the brakes in time and willingly smashed that basin and threw it into the sea, perhaps they could have really broken the curse. But given their greed at the time, how could they have done it? In the face of such a huge amount of money, very few people can resist the temptation." My parents looked at each other meaningfully and then fell silent. That basin was the last thing I took. Just as I was about to smash it with a hammer, I suddenly paused. Maybe if I leave it alone and don't touch it, nothing will happen. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My mother-in-law has been passing black blood recently. After it was diagnosed as colon cancer, my husband told me, "Just tell her it's hemorrhoids." Most cancer patients die from fear. With my deliberate concealment and roundabout care, my mother-in-law escaped the death sentence. Started indulging in greasy food and overeating again, leading to a recurrence of colon cancer. She blamed me. "It must be that you conspired with the doctor back then, treating cancer as hemorrhoids and delaying my best treatment opportunity." I quickly looked at my husband, who had suggested hiding the illness, but he remained silent the whole time. In the end, before her death, my mother-in-law wanted to take someone down with her. She put sleeping pills in the milk she handed to me and turned on the gas to poison me to death, after I died. My husband quickly remarried and moved into the marital home I had bought. bringing along a 1 or 2-year-old child. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my mother-in-law started passing black blood. Judy, I've been passing black blood lately. Could it be a sign of some serious illness? My mother-in-law was both frustrated and a little worried. I looked at her and realized I had been reborn. The same thing happened in my past life. I heard her mention black stool and coincidentally came across information about the symptoms of colon cancer, so I dragged my mother-in-law to the hospital for a checkup. The result was undoubtedly colon cancer. My husband Mark looked worried and said, "Judy, don't tell my mom about this, just say it's hemorrhoids. I'm afraid she'll get too anxious and won't be able to handle it." I expressed my understanding and helped him conceal the illness. Mark was busy with work, so the responsibility of taking care of my mother-in-law fell on me. My mother-in-law was suspicious and always stared at me with sharp eyes. "Judy, I just have hemorrhoids. Do I really need this much money? Are you taking the money to fool around and betray my son?" I complained to Mark about my grievances and asked him to explain a few things. However, he remained unmoved, saying, "Judy, don't take it to heart with the patient. Please try to understand my mom." Later, my mother-in-law's condition was brought under control, and she narrowly escaped a life-threatening crisis, but she refused to follow the doctor's orders and rejected a light diet. If I try to stop her, she points at my forehead and yells. Under my mother-in-law's greasy eating habits, her illness relapsed within half a year of recovery, yet she doesn't reflect on herself. Instead, she blames me. My mother-in-law wailed. "It must be that unscrupulous doctor you found back then, colluding with him to harm and scam money, ruining my health. My constitution has always been good. I've never had such a serious illness before." But before she died, my mother-in-law bowed her head and apologized. "Judy, the king of hell insists on taking my life. Don't blame me. I'm just too afraid of dying." She handed me a cup of warm milk. I didn't suspect anything, nor did I argue with someone on the verge of death. I drank the milk and accepted the apology. But then I fell into a deep sleep. Taking advantage of the opportunity, my mother-in-law closed the doors and windows and turned on the gas tank. I died from carbon monoxide poisoning in my sealed home. After my death, Mark immediately remarried and moved into the house I bought before marriage, bringing along a 1 or 2-year-old child. In this life, no one can touch my assets. As for my mother-in-law, let her fend for herself. I suppressed my resentment and feigned concern, saying, "Mom, what should we do then? Is it serious?" My mother-in-law shot me a disdainful look. "And you call yourself a college graduate? You don't even understand this. All that education was a waste of money. It would have been better to give that money to my son earlier." In my mother-in-law's eyes, I've always been the one who married above my station by being with Mark, even though I earn more than him. She believes it's all thanks to his good fortune and never acknowledges my own capabilities. Ignoring my mother-in-law's sarcasm, I kindly suggested, "How about we go to the hospital for a checkup?" The mother-in-law was getting frantic. "The hospital? To hell with the hospital. Those quack doctors just want to scam us common folks out of our money, always saying we're sick when we're not. I might as well go to the clinic to see what's going on, and then try some traditional remedies from the countryside to treat it." The mother-in-law muttered, not forgetting to order me around. "Hurry up and change your clothes to come with me." I shrugged helplessly. "Mom, I'm really sorry, but the car was sent for maintenance yesterday, and I still have to go to work. You'll have to take the bus." Ridiculous. How could I possibly accompany her to the clinic? Not to mention whether it's reliable or not. What if my mother-in-law ignores the doctor's advice and insists on using folk remedies? If it doesn't work, she might blame me for not stopping her and even drag me down with her. Mark happened to wake up from his nap, and I called out to him, "Mark, Mom is too scared to go to the clinic alone and wants you to accompany her." My mother-in-law was unhappy. "My son is so tired from work. Why are you making him go through all this trouble with an old lady like me?" Mark rolled his eyes and came over to hold my hand. "Judy, why don't you go with Mom? I'm too busy. I know you're the best, Judy, and you'll help take care of my mom." Actually, this isn't the first time Mark has outsourced his filial duties. It's just that I was foolish before and didn't realize it. I waved my hand and said, "The company suddenly called me back to work overtime. You know, at a critical moment like this, I can't refuse." Mark had no choice but to say to his mother, "Mom, as you can see, we're both busy. Go by yourself and pick up some groceries while you're out." My mother-in-law hesitated, unable to finish her sentence. But since her favorite son had spoken, she had no choice but to go out, carrying a free shopping bag from the supermarket. When she returned in the evening, her mother-in-law, no longer worried as she had been during the day, happily cooked a table full of meat dishes. without exception, they were all heavy on oil, salt, and spice, so greasy that just looking at them made me nauseous. The only thing I could stomach was a plate of stir-fried beef, as soon as I reached out with my chopsticks. My mother-in-law swiftly moved the dish away and pushed the plain congee toward me. "Judy, eat this, it's lean meat congee I carefully prepared, it's very nutritious." I glanced at Mark. He was happily watching videos while eating, completely oblivious to what was happening here. I tentatively picked up the meat dish. My mother-in-law would always unexpectedly take it away and place it in front of Mark. This meal was quite awkward and uncomfortable. I couldn't be bothered to pay attention to my mother-in-law's little tricks and just ate the stir-fried vegetables I made myself. It wasn't until the end of dinner that Mark finally remembered to ask about his mother-in-law's condition. "Mom, what did the doctor say? Is it serious?" His mother-in-law immediately became indignant. "That old quack isn't skilled enough to give an accurate diagnosis. He said it could be colon cancer, or it might just be ordinary hemorrhoids, and told me to go to a major hospital for a checkup." I trusted him, which is why I went to his clinic for the exam, but he's trying to harm me. That old fraud must be getting kickbacks from the hospital, deliberately tricking us into going there. I've always had a strong constitution, how could it possibly be colon cancer? You should know. Even when I was pregnant with you, I could still work in the fields. Even the day after giving birth, I was as fine as ever. Back then, everyone who saw me would praise how strong and healthy I was. I know my own body better than anyone. My mother-in-law's firm expression made me unable to hold back my laughter. Both of them looked at me inexplicably. I pretended not to notice and looked up blankly. "Let's eat." "Why are you staring at me? Is there food on my face?" My mother-in-law glanced at my phone and, seeing that I wasn't blushing or flustered, finally let go of her doubts. "Mark, don't worry too much, Mom, it's probably just a minor hemorrhoid. I'll go to the countryside to find some folk remedies. It'll save money and effort." Hearing that it was nothing serious, Mark didn't care anymore and casually brushed it off. "Judy and I are busy, you can go back to the countryside by yourself." After saying that, he went back to playing with his phone. Seeing Mark ignore her, my mother-in-law glared at me angrily. It's completely absurd that this could be blamed on me. I was afraid that my mother-in-law would once again blame the cause of her illness on me, so I applied to my supervisor for a transfer. On the night I left, I simply packed some essentials and valuables. Mark leaned against the doorframe and said reluctantly, "Honey, I don't want to be apart from you." I packed quickly while managing to respond with a few words. "Mark, I don't want to leave either, but if you start paying the mortgage next month, I won't have financial pressure and won't need to go far away." At the mention of the mortgage, Mark's spirits sank. He lowered his eyes, feeling dejected in silence. "Honey, it's my fault for not being more capable. I still need to save my money to cover household expenses. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the comfortable life I promised after marriage, but..." I patted his shoulder and comforted him. "It's okay. Who told me I love you?" I loved Mark, but that was in the past. After moving to another province, Mark initially still sent me messages, sharing daily updates, but before long, our conversations no longer exceeded 3 words. As for my mother-in-law, she posts on her social media every day asking for advice on effective ways to treat hemorrhoids. Whenever someone suggests she go to the hospital, she lashes out, saying they can't stand to see her well and are always eyeing her savings for her funeral. I heard from her again a month later when she called to complain. "Judy, I just don't feel right. I get dizzy after walking just a few steps, and my stomach is bloated and painful. Not only that, but the black blood in my stool is getting worse. Could I really have some serious illness?" I brushed off my mother-in-law's anxiety and responded with the same lukewarm concern. "It's so scary. What should we do now?" I didn't follow up on her words or cater to her every need, which made my mother-in-law immediately change her expression. She cursed and yelled at me furiously. "You're such a useless thing. If I knew what to do, why would I ask you? I'm just an uneducated farm woman. How would I know all these twists and turns? If it weren't for the fact that you've read a few books, do you think I'd bother coming to you?" I couldn't help but sneer inwardly, even when asking for help. My mother-in-law still puts on the airs of an emperor. I pretended to be wronged, but Mom, if you ask me, I don't know either. I always listen to Mark and don't dare make decisions. A fall into a pit, a gain in your wit. I don't dare take responsibility lightly. My mother-in-law never raised me, yet in my past life, I treated her with utmost kindness, and she still wanted to take me with her to death. This time, I didn't suggest she go to the hospital for a checkup. I'm afraid she might overthink it and actually go to the hospital for a checkup. What if she accidentally survives? My mother-in-law questioned me, and I maintained an attitude of knowing nothing no matter what she asked. She gradually lost patience, cursed, and hung up the phone. At night, Mark also called me, his words filled with exhaustion. "Judy, how's work on your end? Could you take some time off and come back to help take care of my mom? She keeps saying all day that she's dying. She's dying, but she refuses to go to the hospital. I have limited energy and really can't spare the attention to take care of her." I let out a long sigh. "Mark, what if we sell the house? That way, I won't have to worry about offending my boss or paying the mortgage, and I can quit my job to take care of Mom." Mark hesitated for a long time before finally saying, "Forget it, I'll let Mom figure it out on her own." He doesn't want to quit his job to become a stay-at-home husband. And he doesn't want me to quit either. With his meager salary, if it were used to pay the mortgage, there would likely be nothing left, not to mention he still has a mistress to support on the outside. His mother-in-law has been suffering from minor illnesses on and off, but she stubbornly refuses to go to the hospital for a checkup. She somehow found a shaman, brewed a few cups of talisman water with ashes, and drank it. In my mother-in-law's eyes, science is a scam, while metaphysics is the real lifesaver. Whether it was a placebo effect or the talisman water actually worked, her complexion looked much better in the selfies she took. The caption in her social media post was full of pride. "I always said I have a strong constitution and won't get seriously ill. Those youngsters kept urging me to go to the hospital. Who doesn't know hospitals are just money-sucking beasts, always eyeing the hard-earned cash of us ordinary folks." Seeing her so stubbornly unyielding, I feel quite reassured. I'll just go with the flow and give her a like to show my concern. My mother-in-law kept delaying, and Mark also ignored it. I stayed away for almost half a year and roughly learned from my mother-in-law's social media updates that she was almost terminally ill. Coincidentally, my temporary transfer ended, and I was ready to return. Under the guise of being a filial child, I planned to torment her a bit and compile the evidence I had collected of Mark's infidelity. I really don't want to just hand over the house to someone else. Mark hadn't seen me for a long time and became unusually attentive, taking the initiative to cook and prepare a large table of dishes, just like his mother's habit. They were all meat dishes heavy on oil and salt, with a small plate of vegetables squeezed into the corner. Half a year had passed, and my mother-in-law, who was originally plump, had become extremely thin, but strangely, there was a fleshy lump in her abdomen. My mother-in-law saw me, snorted coldly, rolled her eyes, and said sarcastically, "They say a son forgets his mother once he has a wife, but Mark has never cooked for me." Little did she know, Mark's eagerness wasn't because we hadn't seen each other for half a year, but because he had been fooling around with his mistress for months and felt guilty toward me. What a pity, the man who once had eyes only for me had still ended up cheating. Mark scolded, "Mom, what nonsense are you talking about again? Judy finally came back. If you drive her away, who will take care of you?" In other words, during the mother-in-law's illness, she took care of all the household chores. What a loving mother to her son. What a filial duty outsourcing mama's boy. At this meal, everyone was clearly harboring their own ulterior motives. While eating, my mother-in-law suddenly vomited blood, saliva mixed with traces of blood sprayed onto the food. I moved away in disgust and grabbed a tissue to wipe my face. The sudden change shocked Mark, and he anxiously shouted, "Mom, Mark." As soon as my mother-in-law opened her mouth, she vomited a large amount of blood. I frantically dialed for an ambulance, reported the address, and only then found a moment to comfort Mark. "Honey, you're the pillar of this family, don't panic, Mom will be fine." Oh dear, seeing my mother-in-law in such a miserable state makes me so happy, but I can't show it. I can only twitch my mouth to keep myself from accidentally laughing out loud. The test results are out. It's late-stage colon cancer. I covered my mouth in shock. "Honey, before I was transferred, Mom kept complaining about feeling unwell. Didn't you take her to the hospital at all?" Mark scratched his head guiltily. "She only complained for 2 days. After that, she was lively and told me it was just hemorrhoids, so she treated it with some folk remedy from the countryside." The doctor sighed. "If you had come for a checkup half a year earlier, there might have been a chance, but now, who knows how much junk she's been eating. The tumor has grown too much, and there's not much hope left. With radiation therapy, she might live another year or two, but it's not certain. You should prepare yourselves mentally." Mark, the mama's boy, instantly deflated like a punctured ball, looking utterly dejected. I glanced at him, squeezed out a couple of tears, and wailed, "Doctor, you must save my mom. We're willing to sell everything we have to pay for her treatment." "Honey, don't you think so?" I threw the question back to Mark. He seemed lost in thought and didn't answer right away. "Honey, I nudged his arm. Mark suddenly came to his senses. We must save her. He hesitated on the last word, as if pondering whether the old woman was worth saving. The old woman was transferred to a general ward. Mark slipped away using overtime work as an excuse. I sit by the hospital bed, happily munching on duck neck. The spicy aroma fills the air, making my mother-in-law drool with desire. She speaks in a hoarse voice, no longer as energetic as she used to be. Judy, hungry. She barely ate 2 bites of that meal before rushing to the hospital for emergency care. It's only natural to feel hungry once the anesthesia wears off. I brushed off my mother-in-law's outstretched hand. Mom, the doctor said you need to fast after the surgery. If you want to risk your life by eating, at least do it at home, not in the hospital. Don't cause trouble for the doctors. My mother-in-law glared at me angrily but had no way to deal with me. After I had eaten most of my food, I went to the restroom to wash my hands. As soon as I came out, I noticed my mother-in-law leaning over, trying to grab the leftover duck neck I hadn't finished. I shouted and hurried over to snatch it back. My God, what are you doing? I told you to fast after the surgery. Do you want to die in the hospital room and extort money from the nurses? At your age, can't you have some shame? My loud shouts startled my mother-in-law, and she quickly withdrew her hand. She widened her eyes in displeasure and roared, "What are you screaming for? I want to be discharged. I'm going to tell my son that you're mistreating me. It's great to be discharged. It's wonderful to be discharged. Only when my mother-in-law is discharged and recuperating at home can I properly show my filial piety to her. Otherwise, she might die in the hospital from craving food and trouble the nurses, but I can't be too obvious about it, so I squeeze out tears again and pretend to be wronged. I've been the one taking care of you all this time. Yet you accuse me of mistreating you. Mom, you're in the late stages of colon cancer. The doctor said you need high protein and low fat. It's not that I'm not letting you eat." An aunt in the ward couldn't stand it any longer and stepped in to mediate. "Elder sister, I was there when the doctor gave the instructions. It really was the doctor who told you to avoid certain foods and stick to a light diet from now on, while you were unconscious. Your son only came by for a quick look and left. But your daughter-in-law stayed by your side the whole time. Your attitude is truly disheartening. If my mother-in-law acted like this, I'd just walk away. I wouldn't have the patience for it." Knowing she was in the wrong, the mother-in-law turned her head away with a cold expression. "Fine, I don't care. I want to be discharged tomorrow. This hospital is no good place. If I stay any longer, my meager savings for my funeral will be completely drained." I pretended to humor her and said, all right, we'll go home tomorrow." Just then, her stomach growled loudly, and she stared intently at the spiced duck neck in my hand, but with several pairs of eyes in the ward fixed on her, she didn't dare to make a move. When I got home in the evening, I told Mark that my mother-in-law insisted on being discharged from the hospital. He had no objections and smoked alone on the balcony, only responding to me after a long while, "Maybe it's better to go home. The money we put in might just go down the drain anyway." The cigarette in Mark's hand flickered on and off, his face hidden in the dim light, making his expression unclear, but I know he's waiting for me to respond, waiting for me to say to give up treatment, so that afterward he can appease his hypocritical conscience. But why should I consider his conscience? "Honey, we have to save her. She's the mother who gave birth to you and raised you. Mom needs care. Will you quit your job, or should I?" Mark took a deep drag of his cigarette, blowing the pungent smoke into my face. "I disdain it." Waving my hand to disperse the smell, Mark said sorrowfully, "I can't be without a job. Judy, you should resign. My mom is a woman, and as a man, it's inconvenient for me to take care of her. As for my mom, the doctor also said she can't be saved. Maybe we should stop the treatment. She might pass away eventually, but we still have to live. What will we do without money?" It has to be said, Mark is unusually cold-blooded. The son, whom the mother-in-law painstakingly raised, shows no concern for her at all, even in a life-or-death situation. He only thinks about how to save more money. Thankfully, I didn't have children. Otherwise, if I gave birth to such inferior genes, I would surely be one of the ones crying in the future. I gently stroked my newly done manicure and said casually, "All right, husband, I can quit my job. It's just the mortgage." Mark's eyes lit up, and he even forgot about his mother's critical condition. "No problem, I'll deliver food after work. If I work hard, I can still pay it off." Hearing this, I put on my signature sweet and innocent smile. "Honey, you've had it tough. We'll get through this difficult time together." It's true that I planned to resign, but not to help Mark fulfill his filial duties. A friend is planning to open a private custom studio and invited me to be a partner. I'm also tired of working day in and day out just to make money for the boss, so I agreed. The next day, I went to help my mother-in-law with her hospital discharge procedures. The doctor on rounds pulled me aside and asked for my opinion. Should we still try to save this life? I shook my head. My husband said there's no more money at home, we really can't afford it. The doctor, having witnessed many life and death partings, was not surprised by this. That might be for the best. For now, keep it from her and maintain an optimistic mood. Perhaps a miracle will happen, and she might live for another year or so. I understand. If you want your mother-in-law to die sooner, just make sure she doesn't live too happily. During this time, Mark, who outsourced his filial duties, did not show up, and I handled everything alone. As for Mark, he wasn't at work either. I asked his colleague, who said he took the day off yesterday on the pretext of picking his mother up from the hospital, but Mark told me he really couldn't get time off, so he asked me to handle everything alone, perhaps because she had escaped the suffocating smell of disinfectant. My mother-in-law was in a good mood. An aunt in the neighborhood saw us return and greeted us with a smile. "Oh, isn't this Aunt Ma? I heard you have cancer. Why didn't you die in the hospital, Pa?" My mother-in-law instantly withdrew her smile. "You old hag just can't stand to see me doing well. My son told me yesterday that it was a misdiagnosis, just a minor case of hemorrhoids, and it's already been treated." My aunt and my mother-in-law used to have a fairly good relationship. But ever since my aunt took over her position as the lead dancer in the square dance group last year, my mother-in-law has held a grudge against her. Not only does she constantly pick on her, but she also makes sarcastic remarks whenever they run into each other in the neighborhood. Over time, my aunt has also grown to dislike my mother-in-law. My aunt sneered. "You actually believe the kind of words meant to comfort someone who's on their deathbed?" The mother-in-law gritted her teeth, clenched her fists, and charged forward. "You're talking nonsense. You just can't wait for me to die." I stood by, watching the drama unfold, and added fuel to the fire at the right moment. "Mom, you just got out of the hospital. Don't get worked up. Auntie isn't wrong. You really are in the late stages of cancer." Auntie didn't want to fight with the mother-in-law at such a critical moment, so she nimbly dodged the attack and ran away while shouting, "Look, your daughter-in-law has already admitted it, and you still won't own up to it. What do you mean, good constitution? If your constitution is so good, why did you only have one child?" After chasing a few steps, my mother-in-law was already out of breath and could only stand there anxiously. When she caught sight of me gloating, she flew into a rage again. "What a disaster. What kind of wife has Mark married? She's ganging up with outsiders to bully me." "Enough," I interrupted her dramatic outburst. "If you want your son to lose face in the neighborhood, keep making a scene. I'm heading back first. Mark is her mother-in-law's weakness. She could go without food or drink, she could disregard her own old skin, but she would never disregard Mark's dignity." The curses that were about to escape her mother-in-law's lips were choked back in her throat. Perhaps she truly realized that her days were numbered. As she quickly simmered down and silently followed me home. My home is on the 5th floor. The down payment for this apartment was covered by my father before my marriage, and I have been paying the mortgage on my own all these years. My mother-in-law originally lived alone in the countryside. 2 years ago, when I was pregnant, she said she wanted to come and take care of me. Under her thoughtful care, I unfortunately had a miscarriage, and she has been staying here ever since, refusing to leave. Back then, I was still love-struck and easily swayed by Mark's sweet talk. I didn't blame my mother-in-law and let her do as she pleased. The elevator stopped briefly on the 4th floor, and I glanced out casually, catching sight of Mark's figure. He was helping a woman who was 6 months pregnant into a room. I squinted and silently blocked my mother-in-law's line of sight. For once, she didn't argue with me until her face turned red and her breath grew heavy. She hunched her stooped back and quietly returned to her room to fetch 3 incense sticks, which she placed in front of the Buddha statue in the living room, murmuring under her breath, "Buddha, bless me. I have offered incense without fail all these years. Please help me overcome this difficulty." I saw my mother-in-law's clasped hands trembling uncontrollably, her eyes blinking rapidly, with a few teardrops hanging in the deep wrinkles. "Mom, just relax. The doctor said you won't die anytime soon. You can probably live for at least another 6 months. My mother-in-law shuddered and yelled at me, "Shut up. If you don't know how to talk, then don't say anything. I'm blessed with great fortune and a long life. I won't die." Mark said it was a misdiagnosis by an incompetent doctor. "I just have hemorrhoids, that's all. I won't die. I won't die. I haven't lived enough yet. How could I die?" The last sentence, my mother-in-law was trembling so much that her voice was a bit slurred. She no longer had the energy to bicker with me. Her mind was completely focused on praying to the Bodhisattva for protection. I thought the situation wasn't dramatic enough, so I continued to provoke her. Mom, stop pretending to be clueless. Whose hemorrhoids take half a year to heal? Look at yourself. You're so thin, you're just skin and bones. And you know, Mark has already said he doesn't plan to save you. You know how it is. Mark always makes the decisions in this family, and there's nothing I can do about it. With that, I hypocritically played the recording, and Mark's unemotional voice echoed through the living room. As for my mom, the doctors said she can't be saved anyway. Maybe we should just stop the treatment. She might pass away eventually, but we still have to live our lives. What are we going to do without money? My mother-in-law's praying gesture froze. I was in a good mood, so I washed a few bunches of grapes and came out to find her still sitting there foolishly. I found a comfortable spot on the sofa, curled up, and started binge-watching a show, completely ignoring her. Seeing that I didn't offer to help her up for a long time, my mother-in-law felt awkward and slunk back to her room, turning to the Ma family ancestors for blessings instead. Mark didn't return until the last minute, and my mother-in-law hadn't left her room the whole time. Mark glanced around the living room. Judy, where's my mom? Oh, she's sleeping in her room. He asked again. You didn't tell her about the cancer, did you? I looked up at him. Auntie next door somehow found out about it and told her when she came back during the day. I thought it wouldn't be right to hide it, so I admitted it. Honey, you and your mom have relied on each other for half a lifetime. You know her well. If she doesn't speak her mind, she'll just ignore the doctor's orders and let her condition worsen until she dies. Mark's clenched fists suddenly relaxed. He walked over, held me weakly, and rested his head on my shoulder. He muttered gloomily, You're right, I've let my mom down. If I hadn't lost my job and couldn't support the family, I would have come back to take care of her with you. He still carried the faint scent of another fragrance, subtle yet mixed with the heavy smell of smoke. I pushed him away. It's okay, I'm here, I'll help take care of our mom. I emphasized the words, take care, but Mark was so immersed in his grief that he didn't catch the underlying meaning, or perhaps, he simply didn't care. All he cared about was not being tied down at home to care for a sick elderly person. I pointed to my mother-in-law's door. Let's go check on Mom. She's been hiding in her room for a long time, okay? Mark talked with my mother-in-law for quite a while and came out beaming, showing no sign of sadness. Honey, I'm going to take a shower first. Go on. After spending many years with me, Mark has picked up the habit of drinking a glass of pure milk before bed and after waking up. I put a few sleeping pills in his glass of milk, and the pills gradually dissolved upon contact with the water. I shouted toward the bathroom, Honey, I left the milk on the nightstand, remember to drink it. I still have some work-related handover tasks to take care of, so I'll head to the study first. Mark replied, Got it, thanks, dear. In the early morning, Mark was still asleep. My mother-in-law, unlike her usual self, prepared breakfast for me in advance. Judy, I was wrong to you before, but now I've come to terms with it. Cancer is cancer. Since the king of hell insists on taking my life, I'll just give it to him. She spoke with remarkable ease, as if the person who had cried and begged not to die just yesterday wasn't her. I responded with polite words, Mom, it's just colon cancer. Don't panic, I'll take good care of Mark from now on. The mother-in-law nodded with satisfaction. Her triangular eyes filled with thick calculation and pride. The two of them, mother and son, might have forgotten that the soundproofing isn't good. I overheard their secret discussion in the living room last night. The mother-in-law screamed and questioned Mark, asking why he didn't save her. Mark choked up, Mom, it's not that I don't want to save you. The doctor said your illness can only buy time. Think about me. If we pour money into it with no return, what will I do after you're gone? Rarely do I get to relive those days of eating pickles with steamed buns. Besides, I've gotten together with Lisa downstairs. She's pregnant with my child, and the prenatal doctor hinted it's a boy. Raising a child is a significant expense. As usual, Mark didn't finish his sentence, waiting for someone else to pick it up and satisfy his intentions. The mother-in-law stammered, I haven't been able to conceive again, and not being able to hold a grandchild has become a deep thorn in my mother-in-law's heart. Upon learning that her son was having an affair, she thought it was normal and even planned to get rid of me, the original wife. My mother-in-law's voice was filled with sorrow yet determination. Mark, the one thing I will never regret in my life is giving birth to you. Since everyone says I won't live much longer, I might as well not go on living. You must keep that child. It's the continuation of the Ma family line. Otherwise, I won't have the face to meet the ancestors of the Ma family, and, tomorrow, you should leave early. I'll help you take care of Judy, as long as she dies with me. You can openly be with Lisa downstairs, and this house won't have to be returned to Judy's family." Mark didn't say a word, silently condoning his mother's actions, which is why he came out looking so pleased. "If I die, he can rightfully inherit the house I bought before marriage under the guise of being a widower." It seems they were certain that I loved Mark so deeply I wouldn't do anything to harm him, so they decided my fate with just a door between us. Mark doesn't even want me to live, so why should I be polite to him? The sleeping pills put in the milk were bought by my mother-in-law. Over the past 6 months, she often couldn't sleep and used aggressive tactics to force the doctor to prescribe them for her. I took a few pills while she was hospitalized, just in case of an emergency. I've been waiting for half a year for the day she would try to harm me, knowing she has late-stage colon cancer. My mother-in-law watched me drink the milk without blinking until the glass was empty, and only then was she satisfied. I played with my phone for a while and then pretended to lie flat on the sofa. "Mom, I'm going to take a nap. Wake me up when you want to have lunch," my mother-in-law replied cheerfully. "Judy, you sleep, don't worry about me." It must be hard for her. Yesterday she hated me to death, but today she's pretending to be deeply affectionate like a mother and daughter. I controlled my breathing and let out a soft snore. Before long, a faint rustling sound reached my ears. It was my mother-in-law tiptoeing over to me, reaching out to shake my arm. "Judy." I shook it 2 or 3 times before confirming that I had passed out. My mother-in-law muttered, "Every grievance has its cause, and every debt its debtor. You've been married to my son for years without bearing a single child. This is what you owe our family. Don't come looking for me down there." The sound of footsteps gradually faded away, and I quietly opened my eyes. My mother-in-law walked to the kitchen and, just as in my previous life, turned on the gas tank and closed all the windows. During this process, I also heard my mother-in-law's faint, almost imperceptible sobs. She must have really wanted to live, but her frail body could no longer support her future. Through the crack in the door, I saw my mother-in-law take out sleeping pills and pour them all into her mouth to chew. Under the influence of the drug, she fell into a deep sleep. The leaking gas was trapped inside the house, filling the air with a strong smell of rotten eggs. I suddenly opened my eyes and sat up abruptly. Mark doesn't have the habit of snoring and was still sleeping soundly in bed. My mother-in-law was the same. I carried my mother-in-law out, hailed a taxi at random, and rushed to the hospital. My legs gave way, and I knelt before the nurse. "Doctor, you must save my mother. She has cancer and can't bear it anymore." Woo-woo, the show must go on, so I genuinely inhaled a lot of gas. After explaining, I passed out. The nurse shouted anxiously, "What's wrong with you all? Quick, bring a stretcher and take them to the emergency room." Thanks to the timely medical attention, my mother-in-law and I were fine, but Mark wasn't so lucky. He died from inhaling too much gas. My mother-in-law woke up and was utterly shocked to see that I was still alive. "Li Jia, why aren't you dead yet?" My condition was mild, and I woke up earlier than her. By now, I had almost fully recovered. I crossed my arms and looked at her coldly. "My dear mother-in-law, how could I die when you're still alive?" Some kind-hearted people in the ward couldn't bear to listen any longer and stepped forward to advise me. "Girl, I don't mean to criticize you, but how could you say such things to upset an elder?" I immediately made a decisive move, throwing myself onto the aunt's hospital bed and wailing, "Wah, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with cancer the day before yesterday, and my husband said he doesn't want to treat it. I even quit my job to come back and take care of her so she wouldn't suffer too much, but I never expected she would think of taking our whole family with her when she goes." Upon hearing this, my aunt's sympathy turned into disdain. "Elder sister, you're already old and frail. Do you need your son and daughter-in-law to die with you just so you can have the courage to face cancer?" "Nonsense," the mother-in-law yelled, making things up. "It's clearly her who doesn't want to treat me and tried to poison me with gas. Are you in cahoots with her? I'm going to call the police and have you both arrested." Wiping my tears, I said, "Mom, while you were unconscious, the police have already investigated and confirmed that it was you who didn't want to live and drugged Mark and me with sleeping pills, and last night I slept in the study, so I didn't know Mark didn't go to work. I only brought you to the hospital. Mark, they say even a vicious tiger doesn't eat its own cub, yet you actually plotted to harm your own son. What are you saying?" the mother-in-law screamed. "How could Mark be dead? I told him to leave early. It must be you. You wretched woman, coveting my savings and deliberately causing Mark's death." The mother-in-law had come to the master bedroom and glanced around a couple of times. At that moment, I had Mark completely covered up, so she thought it was me sleeping and didn't think much of it. I forced a bitter smile. Mom, you're the patient, so you're in charge. Whatever you say goes. I'll listen to you. It's my fault that Mark died. I then apologized to the nurses and other patients in the ward. Sorry for the scene. They looked at me with sympathy, feeling that I didn't deserve such a mother-in-law. Mother-in-law's face turned pale and then ashen. Is my son really dead? I didn't answer, just showed her the death certificate. Overwhelmed with grief and anger, mother-in-law spat out a mouthful of dark blood. I exclaimed, Mom, what's wrong? Doctor, come quickly. Something's happened to my mom, with this act. Who wouldn't believe I'm filial, and my mother-in-law is fierce? Upon hearing the tragic news about Mark, my mother-in-law, who had just woken up less than half an hour ago, fainted again. To be honest, if the test results weren't real, I would have suspected that my mother-in-law's intestinal cancer was misdiagnosed. I've never seen anyone with terminal cancer who could still shout and yell. As the sun set, my mother-in-law woke up again. The incident at noon had caused her too much emotional distress, and due to her poor health, she suffered a stroke and became paralyzed on one side. She could no longer speak clearly and could only lie in bed, waiting for me to take care of her. I held a bowl of steaming hot rice porridge and personally fed it to her. Mom, this is the most nutritious porridge. I've been simmering it for a long time. Please try it. The porridge was very hot, but I pretended it was just the right temperature. My mother-in-law clenched her teeth and refused to eat. I smiled and skillfully forced it into her mouth. My aunt sighed. You're so filial, my dear. Your mother-in-law takes care of everything herself. When I was hospitalized, my own children couldn't even be bothered to visit me. I sighed. What can I do? I love my husband. This is his mother. Now that he's gone, I can't just abandon her. My mother-in-law wanted to argue but couldn't form complete words, just staring wide-eyed and making, sounds. Her thin face made her eyes appear unusually large, and with that intense stare, she looked even more frightening. I feed you another spoonful of plain congee. You said before that lean meat congee is the most nutritious, and the doctor also advised you to eat something light. Go on, eat it. Okay, of course, the congee wasn't made by me. I just bought it from a street vendor, and I specifically asked for the hottest one. After staying for a week, I went to complete the discharge procedures. My mother-in-law couldn't move and could only stay at home, waiting for me to come back and feed her. For as long as she was bedridden, I fed her plain congee. There wasn't a hint of meat, and my meat-loving mother-in-law was extremely frustrated. Under my thoughtful care, my mother-in-law's condition improved. She went from being unable to speak at all to being able to utter a few words. At every mealtime, she begs me, Judy, meat, eat meat. I pretend not to hear. What, Mom, you want to eat porridge, you? My mother-in-law's face turns red with anger, but she has no choice. Her will to survive makes her swallow the plain porridge. Because she refused to eat, I immediately took it away, not spoiling her at all. This is not enough. Every time after feeding her, I order a full-course meal that is visually appealing, aromatic, and delicious to tempt her. Mark has hidden a lot of private savings. I found this money and hired a cheap caregiver. The cost of being cheap is rough handling and a lack of consideration for the patient. My mother-in-law is tormented and wails every day. After finishing the cancer medication, I didn't buy a new supply. The moment she glared at me in anger, I played the recording of Mark giving up treatment. I said to her, Mom, don't blame me. I'm just following Mark's words. Once the medication stopped, without painkillers, my mother-in-law couldn't bear the pain and often moaned. I found it noisy, so I closed the door, put on my headphones, and laughed out loud while binge-watching TV dramas. She occasionally has moments of good mood. Whenever this happens, I take out the photo album of Mark from when he was alive. Mom, look at Mark. What a handsome young man. Look how happily he's smiling. My mother-in-law gently touches the photo, lost in memories, and a kind smile appears on her face. And at the moment she was most immersed, I closed the photo album and forced her to look at the funeral portrait. I said viciously, if you hadn't killed Mark, he would surely be even more spirited now. You're such a wicked mother. How do you still have the face to live? Tears streaming down her face, my mother-in-law shook her head violently. No, after several rounds like this, her psychological defenses grew increasingly fragile. One night, she had a sudden burst of energy before her death. At that time, I was lying in the bedroom watching the surveillance. My mother-in-law first took a fruit knife and tried to twist open my door. Unfortunately, I had locked it, so she returned empty-handed. Crying and laughing, she dragged a chair, staggered to the balcony, and with all her might jumped down. Before she died, she was still holding Mark's photo album in her arms, until the front door was knocked on urgently. I pretended to be half asleep. The neighbor was even more panicked than I was. Li Jia, your mother-in-law has jumped to her death. This time, I didn't shed any fake tears. I indifferently contacted the funeral home and cooperated with the police investigation, then scattered the ashes of my mother-in-law and Mark together into the sewer. After being reborn, I never thought about divorcing Mark and dividing the property. In my principles, there is only widowhood, not divorce. Once he died, I, like he did in my previous life, rightfully inherited all of his assets. I didn't sell the house. I chose to rent it out at a low price. Of course, there was talk about my mother-in-law's suicide by jumping. In the face of poverty, even ghosts have to step aside, so it was quickly rented out. I took my simple luggage and went back to my parents' place. Before leaving, I found the woman downstairs and threw the record of Mark's money transfer in front of her. Her face turned deathly pale. I said casually, "If you don't return the money, the photos of you and my husband's affair will be sent to your husband's workplace and your mother's government office. Neither her husband nor her mother loves her enough. Whichever one she shames, they will not let her off." Third sister eventually scraped together the money and paid back the debt. It wasn't much, just 50,000. Later, I heard that third sister was still discovered by her husband that the child she was carrying was not his, and she was forced to have an abortion and left with nothing. My mother sometimes urges me to remarry. Every time, I would put on a pained expression, choke up, and say, "Mom, I love Mark, I can't forget him." Well, I do love Mark, but it's the money in his pocket that I love, and I really can't forget him. I can't forget how, in my past life, right after I died, before my body was even cold, he immediately remarried and moved into the home I had meticulously decorated, bringing along his 1-year-old child. In this life, he died before me, and that child was never born. As for me, the studio I started with my friends unexpectedly became a huge success, turning into the most popular online store among young people. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.